Hello and welcome, Exile. Today I want to talk about the Righteous Fire change. A lot of people are freaking out saying, hey, it's a massive nerf. Oh no, Righteous Fire is gutted. But I have to say, I couldn't disagree more. I think the skill gem honestly took a buff across the entire board, basically, no matter what way you're building Righteous Fire. And on top of that, it took a massive buff if you want to build into the unique identity of Righteous Fire, which is life and ES scaling. Now I'm going to go over the very specific change that occurred. To start off with, quality got changed from either 10% AoE, 20% burn, 20% spell damage, and it got changed into 0.3 meters of radius. For those of you who don't understand, that's a lot of additional radius. For full context, if you were to look at the Righteous Fire gem and you're looking at gem level scaling, you'll notice that you get 0.1 meter radius every about 4 or 5 levels. Now, when you play Righteous Fire, you equip it at level 1, your AoE sucks. And the difference between going from level 1 to a level 20 gem is 0.5 meters. It's the additional base radius that then gets scaled by increased area of effect modifiers. It makes a big difference. 0.3 meters is no joke. And for context, when you, like if you're going to scale up the gem levels to try to get the same base radius we're getting from just 20 quality, you would need to go all the way to level 32 to get a 0.8 meter radius. That's how much base radius the skill gem has now, just at level 20. And of course, you can still scale gem levels. Like if you're doing Fire Trap, you're going into skill gem levels, you'll still level up your RF and get the base radius you get from the various breakpoints. Not that it is as advantageous as it was, but it still works that way. Now, keep on with me. This is a big AoE buff. Trust me, this will feel pretty dang good in terms of how the skill feels to clear. But the big change here that people are worried about is the base dot damage change. It got changed from 39 to 2,400 with level 1 to level 20, the gem level base dot it gives you. And it got changed to give us 70% damage per for base dot damage per second, instead of 35%. So we're trading this base number here for another 35%. This means we lean heavier into life or ES scaling, we get more out of it, but gem level scaling doesn't carry quite as hard. For example, with the old meta, the synergy was you just scale fire gem levels, you scale percent damage, you scale dot multi, and that would work with both Fire Trap and RF, and they would have perfect little synergy there. And that's what would encourage basically lower life builds where you invest into mitigation layers like Jug Armor stacking or Aegis Inquisitor or Elementalist RF, which is kind of on the iffy end, but it can scale with gem levels and have some pretty big AoE and have like the Explode RF going, right? That is the idea there. Now, the new version of RF, it synergizes heavily with basically, if you could ever remember, I did, for example, like Trickster ES RF, which you get to like 20k ES, something like that. That sort of scaling you can go for. You could go for a Guardian ES RF. You go for the Inquisitor hybrid where you're going for, instead of like an Aegis melding defensive mitigation setup, you just go full ham into life ES stacking. You get a big life number with a big ES number and huge regen. That sort of idea. Or something like the Scion Gagar RF character I made where you just get a massive ES pool. I also think there's potential synergy with the new basically sub ascendancies we have with the league mechanic, like the Warlock ascendancy where you can actually stack some pretty insane flat life. I can't wait to build with that, by the way. I am an addict for life stacking. There are these options that normally would be weaker with the current gem level scaling, but the new gem level scaling just is a huge buff to those sorts of things where you start to just take those your life and ES numbers to the moon. I should also state that when you are investing into these life ES numbers, it's not just about the Righteous Fire gem. Val Righteous Fire itself never had a base damage. Val Righteous Fire was always about the life ES scaling. So when people are making these charts, they're not really giving you the full picture. They're saying, oh, you need 8k life to be equivalent with this gem level. They're not really doing the math correctly because they're just pretending Val Righteous Fire doesn't exist. Val Righteous Fire is giving you additional benefit because you're spending the time investing in the life ES that you wouldn't have before, and there's more benefit to it than they're really basically, I guess, showcasing in their graphs. I think they're kind of short selling it, or they're trying to ignore that side benefit / they don't even think about it. Anyways, besides all that, when you're talking damage for these builds, yes, the Jug RF, Inquisitor RF, Elementalist RF, if you're thinking single target, the base damage of your Righteous Fire took a pretty big hit in that base damage you got from the flat. But the large amount of your single target, when it came to single target, it still was completely contingent on Fire Trap. The bulk of your damage is Fire Trap. And the thing that's very important to note in this new league is dot builds in general. I'm going to say dot builds in general, but specifically for Righteous Fire, Simplex Amulet got a massive change, which is actually a huge buff to damage, which I think counteracts the downside for these builds. I think you could still make the builds just like you're making these ones here. You add in a Simplex Amulet, and you end up probably net neutral in terms of actual single target. And I'll go over that real quick here, because the Simplex Amulet, it's a pretty like niche little thing, but if you look at it like in the patch notes, it's actually really kind of insane. Simplex Amulet got changed to no longer be just -1 prefix and -1 suffix. It now has -2 prefix and -1 suffix, but has 100% increased effect of magnitudes. What this means is you can make an amulet that has +2 fire, 50 dot multi, and then like +2 minimum frenzy quite reasonably. It simply is just a matter of basically like alt spamming dot multi T1, and then annulling off the extra mods, crafting a cannot roll attack, and then doing an augment fire. That's guaranteeing you a +2 amulet at a 50% rate. Just basically you're 50-50 between the cannot roll attack being removed and the dot multi being removed. But in terms of cost, getting a +2 amulet with 50 dot multi and 2 minimum frenzies, that's an insane amount of damage that, one, you couldn't really even come close to matching unless your amulet's like literally a +2 amulet with dot multi and then some other stats on top of it. But this is also a much cheaper thing to do. I don't know how rare Simplex Amulet, for all I know, maybe Simplex Amulet becomes some insane rarity, in which case the cost becomes more prohibitive. But I kind of doubt that. I think Simplex Amulet, and like most all of the weird various bases, they're reasonably common, and you should be able to farm for this in Heist or whatever it is, and then make yourself a very insane damage amulet. I don't know, this could be a point where you say I'm underselling it, but that is, in my opinion, a huge buff to dot builds. It's not only a buff to this version of RF, but also to the Life ES stack version of RF, where you can make a Simplex Amulet that has Giga Chad dot multi, Giga Chad life, and then like all attributes or strength or one other stat, stuff like that. Also, Simplex Amulet at the high end, you can also Hunter Slam on 20 fire dot multi. So it's not just +2 and 50 dot multi, it's +2 and 100 dot multi, which that's just kind of an insane amount of damage. So if you're talking like you're competing with the Mirror Tier Amulet, you can still make a higher damage amulet with Simplex Amulet with the change. So I would say you have to consider that in terms of like the high end. If you're looking for damage, that dot multi does make a big difference. Dot multi is a very impactful stat. But not only that, people are trying to state that your early game is worse somehow. This is just incorrect. If you look at a level 1 RF, you look at the gem level scaling, like you're going through the page, it starts at 39. Of course, if you go through the numbers, it goes from 39 to 56 to 79 to 111 to 142. Like if you go through the gem level scales, this is where it starts. But with the new Righteous Fire that we have now, at level 16, when you equip Righteous Fire, I'd say you're somewhere in the range of 250 to 300 life. I've done it on like 6 or 7 different ascendancies. I've league started or done tests with RF starts. I'm always around this 250 life range. The base damage of 35% of 250 life is 97 flat. AKA the Righteous Fire, if your Righteous Fire was like level 4 or level 3.5 in terms of damage, which you're not going to be at level 3.5 Righteous Fire at that point of your character anyways. And the thing is, this of course goes on a graph. Like as you level up, you get more life. As the gem levels up, it gets more base damage. Now, the gem level damage is going to start scaling a bit faster if you're building this way. If you're building like where you're not going into life scaling, if you're going in for mitigation layers, you're obviously not going to benefit as much from the heavy extra damage you get from the base life scaling. But the thing is, to say it's like it starts out worse or something, that's just incorrect. For the most part, by the time you finish the campaign, you're going to be level 68 or whatever. You're going to have a level 16 or 17 gem. You're not going to hit a level 20 gem until level 90. So to like try to say, oh, I need to have this amount of life at the end of the campaign based on like comparative to the level 20 gem is just incorrect. You don't have that gem level until you've leveled it up, which takes a while. And by the time you're level 90, depending on how you build your character, you can still have competitive damage even before you're considering the Simplex Amulet. I think to say this is somehow killing your league start of RF, I think is just incorrect. But I think it also requires some level of adaptation. I think there are better ways to build RF early game, going more into that life scaling, and I think you'll yield some pretty promising or feels good results. At least I think so. Now, on top of that, the final point I'd like to say is I think the net result is you get a nice AoE buff because of the quality change, and you get a nice fire trap QOL. If you want to stick to the low life, just gem level scale, the normal static way of doing it that people have done it for a while, that will still be pretty similar damage thanks to the Simplex Amulet overall. And then on top of that, you get a QL upgrade to your fire trap because they changed it to give you a bigger fire trap radius trigger effect. Now, personally, I don't know, maybe you don't find it annoying, but whenever I've played fire trap, I find it quite annoying. If I just slightly don't throw the fire trap correctly on the enemy, if it's just a little too far away, it won't trigger. And I think this QOL will help it to trigger consistently, and that'll feel good. You lose 20% damage for 80% trigger area of effect. I'd take that trade any day of the week, but somebody that goes based on PoE numbers versus what actually the skill will feel like to play probably won't. It's up in the air. But ultimately, hopefully I've explained this semi-well about why this is overall just a buff across the board. Ultimately, Simplex Amulet, I think, makes up for the base damage you lost in the gem level scaling. If you want to stick to making it the old way, where you go low life, you go mitigation layers, and then your RF really isn't benefiting much from your life pool, or it gets a solid buff if you're going into investment like this, where you can hit pretty crazy ES or life numbers, and then Val Righteous Fire also is coming alongside you, where it feels good to invest into that life in ES. And I don't know. I like the idea of Righteous Fire having an identity that's unique. Currently, the way it is, the way people build it, it feels like pretty much every other spell in the game. You just force in gem levels and force in percent damage, and you call it a day. I think this sort of gearing or this sort of building your character is more interesting and more fun than just throwing in cluster jewels and the static plus level gem weapons and stuff. I don't know. I like it. I'm positive about it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that disagree and don't like this video, but I think the Righteous Fire change is pretty much just a net buff for everything, and there's going to be a lot of people that don't agree with me, but I don't know. You should look into how much damage you get out of a Simplex Amulet with +2 minimum frenzies and 50 dot multi and +2, and think about how easy this is to make in comparison to the thing you'd be competing with to compete with it, which is a +2 amulet with 20 dot multi, and that's still going to be less damage than Simplex, which is, by the way, much easier to make. Anyways, that's my video on the RF change. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I look forward to making builds with this new change. I'm probably going to do Righteous Fire as my third build of the league. I'm still leaning towards Spellblade. Spellblade got some pretty massive buffs with the gems and should be insane for early game, and I still plan to rush Sanctum because how bad could the Tome rarity nerf be? I mean, honestly, they're probably still going to be 1C on trade. Maybe. I'm not coping. All right, anyways, take care, Exiles. Thanks for watching, and peace out.